There's a particular quality to the light in Savannah, Georgia, as summer gives way to autumn, a golden, honeyed glow that makes even the oldest bricks seem to breathe with memory. It was in that light, on a Tuesday afternoon exactly 3 weeks before everything changed, that I received a phone call that would begin the unraveling of my entire world. But let me set the scene properly for you first. Close your eyes if you like. Imagine a 2-story Federal-style home on Jones Street, built in 1853. White clapboard with black shutters, a wrought iron balcony dripping with purple wisteria, and a wide porch with a swing that creaks in the coastal breeze. This was my home for 43 years. This is where I believed I knew every secret corner, every whispering floorboard, every shadow. My name is Savannah Whitlock. I'm 68 years old, a retired librarian, a widow for 4 years now, or so I thought. But as I've learned, some truths are patient. Some secrets wait decades in the darkness before they choose to make themselves known. That Tuesday began with the comfortable rhythms of retirement. The sun painted amber rectangles on my oak kitchen floor as I measured loose-leaf Earl Grey into my grandmother's porcelain teapot. The scent of damp earth and magnolia blossoms drifted through the screen door. I was contemplating whether to tackle the silver polishing or the pantry reorganization when my phone chirped with the specific ringtone I'd assigned to my oldest friend, Natalie. We hadn't spoken in nearly 5 years. Life, distance, and the quiet busyness of getting older had created that gentle drift that happens between friends. But her voice, when I answered, was exactly as I remembered, warm as sorghum syrup with that melodic Savannah lilt that softens every vowel. "Savannah Whitlock, are you still in that beautiful house on Jones Street, or have you finally run off to Paris like we always promised we would?" We laughed, and for 20 minutes we were 20 again. 2 girls with sun-bleached hair and scraped knees, dreaming of futures that seemed as boundless as the Atlantic. Natalie was passing through on her way to visit her daughter in Jacksonville. Just one day. Could we have coffee? Of course we could. But first, the house needed attention. The coastal rains were forecast to return by week's end, and with them would come that particular southern humidity that makes dust cling and wood swell. I'd planned to clean myself, but this was Natalie, my Natalie, who knew me before I was a wife, before I was a mother, before I became a widow. That's when I remembered Madison Pierce. Madison was a 22-year-old graduate student at SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design. She lived in the converted carriage house behind the old Henderson place 2 streets over. I'd met her at the farmer's market where she sold her watercolor paintings of Savannah's squares and cemeteries. She had that particular combination of youthful enthusiasm and old soul weariness that creative people often carry. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice breathless. "Miss Savannah, I was just thinking I needed to find some extra work this week." "The house needs a thorough cleaning before the rains come. Could you manage this afternoon?" When she arrived an hour later, I gave her the tour, though tours suggest something more formal than what it was, a widow showing a college student where the good cleaning supplies were kept. "Now the study requires particular care," I said, opening the door to what had been my husband's Vincent's sanctuary. The room still smelled of him, pipe tobacco, though he hadn't smoked in 15 years, old paper, and the sandalwood soap he favored. These shelves contain first editions and manuscripts. Please dust gently. And the stairs to the second-floor landing could use a good scrubbing. They're original to the house, 1853 heart pine. I handed her the spare key that normally lived under the ceramic frog on the back porch. Lock up tight when you're finished. I'll be at the Magnolia Tree Cafe if you need anything. The cafe was exactly as it had been when Natalie and I were teenagers. The same tin ceiling, the same slowly rotating ceiling fans, the same smell of freshly ground coffee and beignets. We claimed our favorite table beneath the sprawling live oak in the courtyard, its branches heavy with resurrection fern and Spanish moss. We spoke of ordinary things, her grandchildren, my garden, the way time seems to accelerate after 60. But beneath the pleasantries flowed that deep, underground river of shared history that only childhood friends possessed. It was during a lull in our conversation, as I watched a hummingbird dart between the coral honeysuckle blossoms, that my phone vibrated on the wrought iron table. Madison's name appeared on the screen. I smiled, assuming she was calling to say she'd finished or to ask a question about where something belonged. "Madison, is everything all right?" What came through the receiver wasn't her soft, polite voice. It was the sound of someone trying to breathe through terror. "Miss Savannah?" Her voice was so faint I had to press the phone hard against my ear. "Is there anyone else supposed to be in the house?" The question was so unexpected that for a moment I simply blinked at the dappled sunlight patterning our table. "No, Madison, I'm here with a friend. My husband passed away 4 years ago. There shouldn't be anyone there." A pause so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then, "I was cleaning the stairs, like you asked. I'd just gotten to the second-floor landing when I saw her." "Her?" My teacup met its saucer with a soft clink that seemed unnaturally loud. "A woman? On the second floor. She was wearing what looked like a white dress, old-fashioned, and her hair was long, messy, like she hadn't brushed it in—" Madison's voice broke. "She walked down the hallway and disappeared into the last room, the one at the end." Every sensible thought in my mind insisted there was an explanation. A neighbor letting themselves in for some reason. A lost tourist in one of Savannah's famously confused historic districts. But Madison's next words eliminated those possibilities. She didn't look real, Miss Savannah. She was like a shadow that forgot it was supposed to be attached to something." Natalie was watching me, her brow furrowed with concern. I mouthed, "Emergency," and stood, my legs unsteady. "Madison, listen to me carefully. I want you to walk out of the house right now. Don't run, just walk calmly out the front door. Take your things, lock the door behind you, and wait on the porch. I'm on my way. But my cleaning supplies, leave 'em. Just go, now." The drive home was a blur of panic and rationalization. I called 911 as I navigated Savannah's cobblestone streets, my voice surprisingly calm as I explained to the dispatcher that there might be an intruder in my home. "No signs of forced entry?" "No, officer. I locked everything securely." "The cleaning girl?" "Yes, she has a key, but she's outside now. I'm 2 minutes away." Every red light felt like a personal affront. Every slow-moving tourist carriage seemed deliberately obstructive, and through it all, my mind kept returning to one inexplicable detail. Madison had said the woman disappeared into the last room. The last room on the second floor was a small windlass linen closet, hardly a place someone would choose to hide. When I turned onto Jones Street, the blue and red swirl of police lights painted the rain-slick cobblestones in surreal flashes. Madison sat huddled on my top porch step, her arms wrapped around herself despite the warm humidity. 2 police officers, one middle-aged with the weary expression of someone who'd seen everything Savannah had to offer, and one young enough to still believe in clear distinctions between right and wrong, stood talking to her. "Miss Whitlock?" The older officer approached as I hurried up the walkway. "Your cleaner here says she saw someone upstairs. We've checked the entire property. House, carriage house, garden shed. There's no one here. No signs of entry. All windows and doors are secure." Madison looked up at me, her eyes wide and swimming with tears. "I saw her. I swear I did." I believed her, not because it made sense, but because terror has a particular authenticity that's difficult to fake. At that moment, Vincent's old Mercedes sedan, the one I still kept maintained and drove on Sundays, pulled into the driveway, except it wasn't me driving it. My husband, Vincent Whitlock, who was supposed to be at a writer's retreat in the North Georgia mountains, stepped out looking perplexed at the police presence. "Savannah, what's happened?" In the chaos of explaining, I watched his face closely. Vincent was a novelist of moderate regional fame. His Southern Gothic mysteries sold well enough to keep us comfortable, but not so well that he'd lost his essential humility, or so I'd believed. He listened, nodded, then approached Madison with that gentle, paternal manner that had always been one of his most endearing qualities. "You must have had quite a fright. This old house, it's full of shadows and memories. Sometimes when the light hits the stained glass on the landing just right, it casts shapes that look like people moving. I've startled myself more than once." His explanation was so reasonable, so perfectly Vincent, that I felt my anxiety begin to dissolve into embarrassment. Had we really called the police because of a trick of the light? The officers seemed relieved to have a sensible explanation. They offered some standard safety advice, reminded us to call if we saw anything else unusual, and left with that particular professional courtesy that masked mild annoyance. Madison, still trembling, gathered her things. I paid her double what we'd agreed, apologizing profusely. "Don't apologize, Miss Whitlock," she said softly. "I know what I saw." Vincent placed a comforting hand on my shoulder as we watched her walk away in the drizzle. The imagination is a powerful thing, especially in old houses. "Come inside, darling. I'll make us some tea." That night, as rain tapped a gentle rhythm on the roof, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. Every creak of ancient timber, every sigh of settling plaster seemed amplified. Vincent slept soundly beside me, his breathing deep and regular. But something had shifted. Some fundamental certainty I'd held about my home, my life, had been subtly altered. The next 3 months passed with surface normalcy. I officially retired from the Savannah Public Library system, exchanging the structured busyness of work for the self-directed rhythms of home.
Vincent was between books, spending his days in his study or at the nearby writers' club he frequented. And then the noises began. At first they were easy to dismiss, the house settling, squirrels in the eaves, the ordinary protestations of a structure built before the Civil War. But patterns emerged. The noises always came between midnight and 4 a.m. They followed a particular sequence. 3 soft scrapes, like a chair being moved, a pause, then the faintest sound of footsteps. Not the heavy tread of an intruder, but the light, hesitant steps of someone trying to be quiet. One morning over breakfast, as golden autumn light streamed through the kitchen windows, I mentioned it to Vincent. "Probably just mice in the attic," he said without looking down from the newspaper. "I'll pick up some traps today." He did. Large, old-fashioned snap traps that he baited with peanut butter and placed at the base of the pull-down attic stairs, the kind that make that terrible definitive snap when triggered. The noises stopped completely, but other things began to happen, small, seemingly insignificant discrepancies that, like individual brushstrokes, began to form a disturbing picture. The spicy andouille sausage I bought from the French market, the kind Vincent always claimed was too aggressive for his constitution, began disappearing in small portions. When I mentioned it, he shrugged. "I've developed a taste for it in my old age, I suppose."
Then the bathroom incident. We returned from visiting friends in Charleston to find the second-floor bathroom floor soaked, water droplets still trailing down the shower walls. The street outside was dry, no rain for days. "Must be a leak in the pipes," Vincent said, already turning away. "I'll call a plumber." He never did, and the mystery remained just that, a mystery. But the true turning point came on a Thursday afternoon when I decided to organize Vincent's study. The small, stubborn drawer in his antique writing desk, the one that had been stuck since we bought it at auction 20 years earlier, suddenly sprang open when I accidentally knocked against the desk. Inside, beneath a sheaf of tapped manuscript pages, was a leather-bound notebook. Not Vincent's. He composed exclusively on a computer, calling handwriting a charming anachronism. This notebook was different. Old but cared for, its brown leather cover worn soft at the edges. The pages were filled with the most beautiful flowing script I'd ever seen, unmistakably a woman's hand. I turned the pages slowly, my breath catching. Story outlines, character sketches, plot ideas that bore a haunting resemblance to Vincent's most successful novels. There was even a draft of what would become the opening paragraph of Magnolia Shadows, the book that had won him the Georgia Author of the Year award. My hands began to tremble. 37 years of marriage teaches you certain things about a person. Vincent didn't just prefer typing to handwriting, he was physically incapable of producing script this elegant. His handwriting was the practical, slightly messy scrawl of someone who viewed writing as purely utilitarian. So whose notebook was this? I was still sitting there, the notebook heavy in my lap, when Vincent entered the study. "Organizing my chaos?" he asked with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I held up the notebook. "I found this. It's beautiful." For the briefest moment, less than a second, something flickered in his expression. Not surprise exactly, more like the momentary panic of a chess player who sees an unexpected move. Then it was gone,
replaced with gentle amusement. "Ah, that? A reader sent it to me years ago, filled it with story ideas she thought I might use. Sweet, really. I should have thrown it away, but it seemed cruel." His explanation was perfectly reasonable, and yet, that night the noises returned. Not the previous soft sounds, but something new, a faint, rhythmic scratching, like a pencil on paper, coming from directly above our bedroom. I woke Vincent. "Do you hear that?" He listened for a moment, then sighed. "Savannah, you're letting your imagination run wild again. It's probably just a branch against the roof." But there were no trees that close to that part of the house. A week later, Vincent announced he needed to go to Atlanta suddenly. "My editor wants to meet about the new book. I'll be back in 3 days." His behavior was odd, packing haphazardly, avoiding eye contact. Just before he left, he gripped my shoulders with unusual intensity. "While I'm gone, don't let anyone in, especially not anyone from the publishing house. They're getting pushy about deadlines." The request was so strange, so unlike him, that I simply nodded, bewildered. He'd been gone less than 2 hours when the doorbell rang. Mr. Harrison, Vincent's editor of 20 years, stood on my porch with a young assistant. Both looked tense. "Savannah, I know Vincent is here. We need to talk to him. The manuscript was due 6 weeks ago." I repeated what Vincent had told me to say. Mr. Harrison's expression shifted from frustration to something resembling pity. "Savannah," he said gently, "your neighbor, Mr. Peterson, mentioned he sees the attic light on every night until 2 or 3 in the morning. If Vincent's working that hard, the book should be nearly finished. We're not the enemy here. We want to help." The attic light. We never used the attic. It was storage, holiday decorations, old furniture, boxes of things we couldn't bear to part with but had no use for. Why would the light be on? After they left, I stood in my hallway looking up at the ceiling as if I could see through plaster and wood to what lay above. The attic. The pull-down ladder was stiff from disuse. It groaned in protest as I lowered it, releasing a puff of dust that danced in the afternoon light. The air that flowed down was cool and carried a peculiar scent. Old paper, yes, and dust, but something else, something faintly human. My phone's flashlight cut a narrow beam through the darkness. The attic was exactly as I remembered. Boxes labeled in Vincent's handwriting, "Christmas, 1998, Savannah's teaching materials," an old steamer trunk, furniture shrouded in white sheets like sleeping ghosts. But as I moved the beam slowly across the space, differences emerged. A path had been worn in the dust from the hatch to the far corner. The sheets on some furniture weren't as dusty as others, and there, in the deepest corner, was a space that had been lived in. A small writing table with a chair, an oil lamp, its glass chimney smudged with soot, stacks of paper neatly organized, a thin mattress on the floor with a blanket and pillow, and several beside it, a plastic water jug and empty cans, beans, soup, fruit. But what stopped my heart was what hung on the wall above the desk. A photograph, faded with time, in a simple wooden frame. 2 girls on a Savannah beach, arms around each other, smiling into the sun. One was me at 16, the other.
For a long moment, we simply stared at each other. 30 years dissolved in the space between one breath and the next. "Sister," she whispered, and the sound was like dry leaves rustling. What followed was a confession that unfolded in fragments between tears and silences that stretched like the Savannah River at dusk. 30 years ago, Cassandra's editor, Richard Mercer, had made advances she rebuffed. When he became forceful, she defended herself with a heavy crystal ashtray, a single, terrible blow. She hadn't meant to kill him, but she had. Vincent arrived moments later, coming to pick her up for a family dinner. Instead of calling the police, he saw a different solution. He'd take care of the body. He'd protect her. For me. He said you'd never survive the scandal, Cassandra whispered, her voice breaking. He said it would destroy you, destroy the family, that he could make it all go away. So he did. Richard Mercer's body was buried in the marshes near Tybee Island, and Cassandra was brought here, to the one place no one would ever think to look for her. Just until things calmed down, Vincent had promised. But things never calm down, not really, and temporary arrangements have a way of becoming permanent. The first year was the hardest, Cassandra told me. The loneliness was a physical pain. The guilt was a constant companion. To keep from losing her mind, she began to write stories, poems, fragments of a life she could no longer live. Vincent found her writings, and he saw something in them. Talent, yes, but also opportunity. "Write for me," he told her. "I'll be your voice in the world." My successful novelist husband, the man whose career had blossomed seemingly overnight after Cassandra's disappearance, the man whose brilliant Southern Gothic voice critics praised, was a fraud. Every word, every plot, every character that had earned him acclaim had come from my sister's hand, from her captivity, from her silenced voice. The police, when they finally believed us, moved with a startling efficiency. Richard Mercer's remains were found exactly where Cassandra said they'd be buried. Vincent was arrested at a roadside motel outside Macon, Georgia. The trial was a media circus, the Savannah ghostwriter scandal, the papers called it. Vincent pleaded guilty to everything: obstruction of justice, fraud, unlawful imprisonment. The man I'd loved, built a life with, mourned as a widow for 4 years, for he had, in every way that mattered, died the day I found that attic, was sentenced to 30 years. Poetic, I suppose. Cassandra's legal situation was more complicated. Self-defense, the prosecution argued, 30 years of imprisonment more than sufficient punishment, her lawyer countered. The case was still pending when Cassandra took her own life in her detention center cell. She left a letter, not of apology, but of explanation, of release. When you read this, I will finally be free. Not the freedom Vincent promised, the conditional, shadowed freedom of the attic, but real freedom. The manuscript in the wooden box under the desk is my story, my true story. If you can, let it be published under my name, not as a ghost, not as a rumor, but as Cassandra Ann Whitlock, who existed, who loved, who wrote. It took me months to open that wooden box. When I finally did, on a bright Savannah morning with sunlight streaming into what had been Vincent's study, I found not just a manuscript, but a life.
327 handwritten pages, the story of a woman who chose to become a ghost to protect her sister, who found her voice in silence, who created beauty in captivity. The publishing world, initially hesitant about the scandal, recognized genius when they saw it. Whispers in the Attic by Cassandra Whitlock became not just a book, but a phenomenon, a testament to the human spirit's indomitable need to create, to speak, to be known. The attic is different now. I had the window enlarged. Sunlight floods the space where shadows once reigned. Cassandra's writing desk sits in a place of honor, her manuscripts preserved under glass. The space is no longer a prison, but a memorial, a library of one. And me? I still live in the house on Jones Street. The wisteria still blooms purple each spring. The porch swing still creaks. And sometimes in the deep stillness just before dawn, I imagine I can hear the soft scratch of a pencil on paper, not as a ghost story, but as a reminder that every house has its secrets, every family has its hidden rooms, and sometimes the most haunting stories aren't about ghosts, but about the living folks we choose not to see. So as you drift toward sleep tonight, let this story settle around you not as a tale of horror, but as a story of ultimate liberation, of a voice silenced for 30 years that finally found its way into the light. Think of your own stories, the ones you tell and the ones you keep hidden, the truths you speak and the silences you maintain. There is peace in truth, dear listener, even painful truth, even devastating truth, because lies, like termites in old wood, slowly eat away at the foundation until nothing's left but a beautiful facade waiting to collapse. Cassandra taught me that. In her final letter she wrote, "The attic was not my prison. Silence was. The moment I told you my truth, the bars dissolved." Let that wisdom guide you into rest tonight. Release the stories you've been keeping inside, not necessarily to the world, but to yourself. Acknowledge them, honor them, give them air. Feel the weight lifting from your shoulders, the tightness in your chest easing, the stories you carry settling gently into place. You are not responsible for other people's secrets. You are not required to live in anyone else's attic. Your voice, your true, authentic voice, is your birthright. Breathe in and out, deeply, slowly. Let every exhale carry away a fragment of silence you no longer need to bear. Imagine sunlight streaming into your own attic spaces, illuminating corners long left dark, revealing not monsters, but memories, not ghosts, but gifts. You are safe in this moment. You are heard in this space. You are free to be exactly who you are. Now let sleep carry you to peaceful places where truth is gentle and every voice finds its hearing. Good night, dear listener. May your dreams be as deep and peaceful as the Savannah River at midnight, and may you always remember the most important story you'll ever tell is your own. If this story found a place in your heart tonight, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Your stories matter too. Until tomorrow night, sleep well, dream true, and remember, Even the longest night eventually gives way to dawn. Good night.